Have you ever heard the phrase, no pain, no gain? I was a sophomore in high school when my football coach approached me. He told me that I would be able to make the varsity team next year on one condition. I started lifting weights now and got stronger. Barely knowing anything about lifting weights, I headed to the weight room that day. Luckily, there were a few older friends there lifting weights, and they took me under their wings and showed me the ropes. They set me up with a routine to do that day, and I enthusiastically went about lifting weights. It got my heart rate pumping and body sweating, but I didn't view it as hard at all. I went home feeling like I could lift weights every day, no problem at all. The next morning, I started getting out of bed, and the pain was almost unbearable. My arms and chest were on fire every time I tried to move them. I had learned a very valuable lesson. No pain, no gain. When building stronger muscles, you break them down so that they can be built back up. After about a week, the pain was almost gone, and I could lift a little more weight than I had before. The muscles had built themselves stronger. This lesson I learned wasn't only for lifting weights. It taught me the very reason why we need trials and tribulations in life. Trials give us rewards. You may or may not have heard the story of Job. The story is found in the Bible, in the book of Job. Job is described as a just and perfect man. Satan was allowed to do anything to try and get him to curse Heavenly Father and not follow him. Job loses everything. For example, he loses his house and possessions, his wife and his children, and even gets sick and loses his health. He goes through very hard times and even repeatedly asks Heavenly Father why this has happened. Through all this pain and sorrow, Job learns a great many things about himself and improves his spirituality. The trials end, and I quote from Job 42:12. So the Lord blessed the latter end of Job more than his beginning. His trials were extremely hard, but in the end, Job grew how he was supposed to and was blessed with even more than he had before. If you stop looking at how trials are so terrible and start looking at what they can do for you, you will be rewarded and shaped how you are supposed to be. There is a story of a person who understands this. It is called The Blacksmith by Linnell Waterman, and I quote, You perhaps recall the story of the blacksmith who gave his heart to God. Though conscientious in his living, still he was not prospering materially. In fact, it seemed that from the time of his conversion, he had more trouble, affliction, and loss than ever before. Everything seemed to be going wrong. One day, a friend who was not a Christian stopped at the blacksmith's little forge to talk to him. Sympathizing with him in some of his trials, the friend said, It seems strange to me that so much affliction should pass over you, just at the time when you have become an earnest Christian. Of course, I don't want to weaken your faith in God, or anything like that, but here you are with God's help and guidance, and yet things seem to be getting steadily worse. I can't help wondering why it is. The blacksmith did not answer immediately, and it was evident that he had thought of the same question before. Finally, he said, You see the raw iron that I have here to make into horses' shoes? You know what I do with it? I take a piece and I heat it in the fire until it is red, almost white with heat. Then I hammer it unmercifully to shape it as I know it should be shaped. Then I plunge it into a pail of cold water to temper it. Then I heat it again and hammer it some more. And this I do until it is finished. But sometimes I find a piece of iron that won't stand up under this treatment. The heat and the hammering and the cold water are too much for it. I don't know why it fails, but I know it'll never make a good horseshoe. He pointed to a heap of scrap iron that was near the door of his shop. When I get a piece that cannot take the shape and temper, I throw it out on the scrap heap. It will never be good for anything. He went on, I know that God has been holding me through the fires of affliction, and I have felt the hammer of experience upon me, but I don't mind. I only hope he can bring me to what I should be. And so in all these hard things, my prayer is simply this: strengthen me in trials, Lord, and don't throw me on the scrap heap. When we humble ourselves, we can be more easily shaped into what we need to be. Each trial leads us, like steps on a ladder, to what Heavenly Father wants us to be. We get heated and pounded until we are shaped as we need to be. We can accept that trials are good by following the example of a boy. There is a poem that I will paraphrase and quote that is called "The Race" by Dilbert L. Groberg. It's the start of a foot race with boys, each one excited to prove to their fathers that they are the best. The race starts and the boys take off. One boy that is near the front and just as he thought of how proud his dad would be, he slipped and fell down. The crowd laughed, and he was so embarrassed that he didn't want to get up. As he looked at the crowd, he saw his father's anxious face, and to the boy, that told him that he needed to get up and win the race. He got up and took off running until he was only behind a little bit. Trying hard to catch up, his mind went faster than his feet, and he slipped and fell again. Looking at his father, he saw the look again. He rose a second time. Running fast, he passed the 9th boy, then the 8th boy. While trying hard to pass the 7th, he slipped for the 3rd time. He couldn't see the crowd that well, but words came to him in his mind, and I quote from the poem. Get up, an echo sounded low. Get up and take your place. You were not meant for failure here. Get up and win the race. With borrowed will, get up, it said. You haven't lost at all, for winning is no more than this, to rise each time you fall. End quote. As you might have guessed, the boy got up for the 3rd time and started running again. He heard the crowd cheer the first place boy. But as he crossed the finish line, last place, he would have thought that he had won the race by the cheer of the crowd. Life isn't about horrible trials. It's about finishing the race and rising each time we get a trial. When we look back, we see the trials are stepping stones to what we are today. We can look forward at trials with the knowledge that they are a good thing and that they are simply new ways to grow and gain rewards.